Welcome, super happy you're here for the next episode of Creative Industry Radio. I couldn't be more excited to have Jeannette Bohné on the pod. She's a very experienced creative director that has been working for the big players in the industry like Grey, DDB and BBDO before she switched to the client side and signed at Amazon Prime Video as a creative director, bringing her magic to life. She also works as the co-president of the Art Directors Club in Berlin and is a strong advocate for female rights, especially the right for abortion, which I highly support. In this conversation that took a quite surprising spiritual turn and which I enjoyed very much, we spoke about psychedelic breathing, meditation and the Wim Hoff method. And of course, we took a deep dive into the work of a creative director and Jeanette's experiences in the creative industry. She said that in the past 10 years, she probably made you buy something or made you fall in love with yourself a little more. Are you curious if she's right? Cool, let's find out. Oh, and if you ever wanted to know what it takes to write erotic audio stories with a twist, this episode is for you. Here's Jeanette. Enjoy. I'm super happy to have you here.
Hello, thank you very, very much for inviting me. I'm great. Teensy tiny bit excited, but most of all, super great. And it's a great pleasure to talk to you. We haven't seen each other in a million years, basically.
It's a couple of Thursdays ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when was that? In 2017?
Yeah, I think it was 17. Yeah, it was 17 in Düsseldorf at a Vakuum creative night. Yeah.
We've been sharing the stage and talking about portfolios, if I remember correctly. And
yeah, portfolios and pines, I think was the thing called.
Yeah. Yes. And that's where I met you, and I think I followed you ever since. And whenever I saw some posts of you, I was always happy to see that. And when I started the English version of this podcast, I decided that you would be a very good match. And so I'm happy that you're here. And actually, I got a ton of feedback on the announcement you'd be on the show, and which is very cool. So for the two people out there that don't know you, could you give the creative family a little background on who you are, where you live, and what you're doing?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's way more people than two, but thanks for the flowers. As you said, I'm Jeanette. I live in Berlin. I'm working on living in Berlin and Palma de Mallorca. That's actually a place where I would love to spend a lot more time because my mom is Spanish and I enjoy being surrounded by Spanish-speaking people. But I also have in Berlin quite a lot here in Prenzlauer Berg, so that's really nice. I'm a trained designer and copywriter, but most of all, I think of myself as a storyteller. So my job, but also my passion, is to tell stories. And I'm hoping by telling the right stories to the right audience that I can make them feel seen and I can make them feel really good about themselves and their decisions, and I can make them a little bit more happy. So that's basically what I do. Is I tell stories and I take stupid selfies that I post on Instagram. So yeah,
I love that, and I love that you say that you're telling stories, because I think we both have a background in advertising, and advertising can be so, I don't know, superficial and boring. And there are some advertisements that I still remember from being a kid, when I know there were stories being told, and brands actually were diving deep into getting into the people's heads, and it was actually enjoyable. I remember that when we were kids, we were watching television, and there were two things that we always we having like a challenge to. There were music videos back in the day, and there were commercials, and we always were guessing what it is, and whoever said it first won. And that doesn't happen anymore. And I don't know, there's just too much advertising in all sorts of channels, and I guess you only stick out when you tell the good story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people can really smell it if you're not authentic, if you're not real, if you bullshit them. I think people can really, they can sense it. They're not stupid. But it's interesting because I don't have a television. So whenever I go to my parents' house and they're switching on the TV, I'm watching, like really watching advertising like a maniac. I'm sitting in front of it and I can't turn my head away. And very often what you see there is so depressing. I feel like 80% of advertising that you see on television is for websites. And it always explains to you how to use a website. And I was like, wow, people still don't know how to use a website. That's crazy.
30 years in.
Yeah, 30 years in, exactly. And that I find really interesting. But sometimes it's also quite heartbreaking to see it, because sometimes you see an ad where you go like, wow, the idea was really cool, but the execution is super poor. And I mean, we've all been there. Sometimes you had a great idea, but execution fell flat. And sometimes you can see the execution is really super glossy and nice and pretty, but there is absolutely no idea behind it. So.
Yes, and no story.
No story, nothing. But I think it's always interesting, because when you work in this industry, you get so pigeonholed and you're really like deep down and like the rabbit hole, and you see all the details. And then like once a year, story out of my part, once a year I meet all of like a big group of friends who went to school
Cool.
with me, and we all finished school together. And usually we meet after Christmas for like a big raclette, so melted cheese night. And when I was still in advertising, there were some years when I was so proud, I came there, beaming like, oh, I was in Cannes and I won a bronze line. And they looked at me like, well, have you seen that advert from Media Market? That's really funny. Ha ha ha. And I had never like seen or heard any of the stuff I did. And that was a good reality check, that very often when I thought I did something that mattered, it didn't matter. So,
and that's such a tiny bubble.
Oh, such a tiny bubble. Yeah. Nightmare.
That's true. But speaking of that tiny bubble, you've been working in a couple of really well-known agencies. And to get started, or to get you started on the right foot, I asked someone from our networks, and I wanted him to give some feedback and his thoughts on you and your work. And I would love to play it to you. It's the Chief Growth Officer of Publicis, Christoph Pietsch. And he gave me a little feedback for you. Here it goes.
Hi, Jan. Thanks for your message. I hope you're doing well. And you asked me about Jeanette. I was very lucky to work with her in two agencies. One was Grey years ago, and the other one was DDB. And three things come to my mind thinking about Jeanette. First thing is she has a very strong opinion and is thinking in a very bold way. Second one is she's ultra hungry and really works her ass off to be successful and to get the best out of herself and the team working on a brief or a challenge. And the third one is she's able to identify with brands, with a team and a company. And these are three skills that make Jeanette a very special person.
Oh, what a nice surprise. I haven't spoken to Pietsch in ages.
Yes, and so thank you, Christoph, for giving us your voice. And yes, I thought that would be nice, to have a little feedback from your bubble.
It's so beautiful. Thank you so much. I was like, I hope I can play this to my manager.
I guess you can. I was happy that happy to hear that you were happy about it. And
super, super happy. Also, I think it's very important that we actively ask for feedback. And usually when we do that, and especially when women do it, they are looking for negative feedback in the sense of like, tell me what I can do better, tell me what I'm doing wrong. And I think sometimes it should be the other way around. We should actively ask for positive feedback, to feed our soul. Also, funny coincidence, I have like a background picture on my private laptop that goes like, I'd rather choke on greatness than nibble on mediocrity. So I find it super interesting what he said, because I think when Christoph and I worked together, I was still finding my boldness, but apparently I faked it very well, so that he thought I am already. Yeah. So, yeah, no, thanks a lot. Oh, that's a super, super nice surprise.
All right, so let's move on. When I read your website, I loved the statement you put there. You said that I'm proud to say that chances are high that at some point in the last 10 years, I rather made you buy something or fall in love with yourself. And I would love for you to unpack this a little bit for our listeners. And maybe you can take us behind the scenes of why you said that and what it actually is that you're referring to there.
Yeah. So I worked in advertising for 10 years and for very, very different brands, fast-moving consumer goods. Fast-moving consumer goods, for those who are not in our industry, that's stuff like shampoo or toothpaste or shower gel or whatever other beauty product there is. Fashion was one of my clients, like sneakers, for example, or clothes. I worked for automotive, so that's car stuff and telecom, for example. And that's the part where I say, like, I'm pretty sure you bought something that I advertised. And it, on the one hand, I think it's a weird thing to be proud of it because that's capitalism at its best. But on the other hand, I am proud of it because I think that means that I told you a story that you could relate to or that you wanted to believe. I don't believe so much in asking a consumer what they want because I think it's not about like, what do you want? And then here it is. I think it's more about like, I need to create a desire. And of course, there is an evil aspect of creating desires because it is, of course, about capitalism and making you feel like you need to have something. But then again, that I think is the power of storytelling. If you find an angle that makes like a very normal or regular product and turns it into something you really desire, something you really want to have because you can relate to it. That's the made you buy something part.
Yes.
And then on the other hand, I think it was in end of 2020, start of 21, I got a really, really great opportunity because my best friend back then was working for a little startup company who focused their energy on female pleasure content. That's a fancy way to say audio porn for like for women. And she asked me if I wanted to try and write some erotic audio stories. So I prepared a pitch deck, like where I presented myself, and I prepared a pitch deck. Write 3 topics in there, and I sent it over to her team. And she, of course, stepped out of it to not influence the opinion of others. And they read through it, and they basically bought all the stories that I pitched to them. And then I had to sit down and actually write erotica. And of course, I have fantasies, I have a mind. I've watched porn, but still to write stuff yourself and then to write it again in a way that is very inclusive is a whole different experience. And I consciously made the decision to not describe the female body in all of these stories or to not describe also the male body. And it was a very conscious decision. So whenever I started a story, there was never like a tall blonde woman or a woman with like long shiny hair or, or like long legs or a rib cage you could touch or like a massive dick. I consciously decided to not do that because I personally think if we all felt more pleasure and more self-love, and quite bluntly, if we all had more orgasms, we would all be a lot happier and less depressive and less anxious. But if you tune into a story, if you watch it, it's even worse because you can literally see and compare yourself. But even if you just tune into an audio story, and for example, you look like me, so you're rather short and you have dark hair and your hair is rather wavy and you're quite hairy. And then you only hear stories about like long-legged, beautiful, blonde goddesses. It makes you feel like that kind of pleasure is not for you. And I think the same goes for men. If you only hear stories about men with like rock hard pecs and I don't know, massive penis as you can do it for 2 hours. And you're not that kind of man. You might feel like you don't deserve that kind of pleasure. And that's why I made this decision to never describe the outer appearance of any of my characters. And this worked very well. And I'm super happy that the company I was writing for was very open to that, because there could have been reasons why they wanted to know, like, or skin color or ethnicity or anything. But they let me do it the way I wanted to do it. And that made me very happy. And I want to believe that it also helped lots of other people to be very happy for 10 or 12 or 15 minutes and to escape reality and feel like whatever like erotic adventure I was thinking of could happen to them, and that their body, no matter what size or shape or color or ethnicity or whatever it is, deserves to be loved. So, and that's the whole message. And that's basically the two sides. So chances are really high that you maybe bought a shampoo because I told you a nice story, and maybe you've tuned into a little audio erotica that was also written by me.
I think that's a really wonderful idea, to have these kind of inclusive stories so that everybody can relate. And I guess as everybody else, we're super curious to be able to read them. And I guess we can ask you to send a link once they are available, right?
Yeah. Yes, totally. You can do that. Or, actually, I was thinking the other day about maybe it's time to start like an OnlyFans where people just tell me, their fantasy. Not everyone is good at writing that stuff, just like not everyone is good at dirty talk. That's fine. So where people could, pitch me their fantasies, and I turn that into a very personalized audio story. Maybe it's because I was re-watching Her some weeks ago, where Joaquin Phoenix falls in love with
the AI.
With the AI.
Which is a really interesting topic at the moment.
It is, right? It is. And I mean, his job in there is to write love letters, what is also, I think, like a craft, and that can go so wrong and be so cheesy. And I was thinking like, well, if you, personalize love letters, that's nice. But what about personalized erotica? So it might cost me my job, but I'm seriously considering doing something like this.
So you all heard that. Hit her up with your ideas and she will turn that into gold.
Exactly. Just got to do some voice training, I think I need to work on my voice, but I can hire someone to read them.
Yes. Actually, a good friend of mine, Ava Pivo, she's a photographer from Berlin. She knows quite a lot of the cast of actors from Germany, and also the dub voices. Is that what we call that in English? From some Hollywood stars. So maybe we can arrange something there.
Amazing. Maybe we can do something with Scarlett Johansson, German voice of Scarlett Johansson.
I think that should be possible. So I'll connect you both, and then maybe that can work out.
Yes.
All right. Speaking of female pleasures and male pleasures, and also we just gave it a little sneak peek in the beginning. Speaking of female rights, I wanted to thank you for sending me that image that I asked you for. And you sent me an image that is like a billboard that is hanging in, is it a subway station? Right?
Yeah,
and
it was a subway station in Berlin-Neukölln.
All right. And would you maybe explain to everybody what that is, what we're looking at, and so that they can relate? They can go to the Instagram post and the LinkedIn post of this episode, and they can see the image and comment on it, and we'd be happy for them to do so. But maybe we can hear from you what is special about this for you, and why did you choose that?
So the picture I sent to you was from a campaign that together with the awesome Tatjana Genin, who also we worked together at Grey also for some time, and she is now, I think, with Christoph. I think she is at Publicis or Saatchi. And Saidan Celik, who is like the most amazing illustrator you've ever met, who I met at BBDO Berlin. And so together at BBDO, we developed this campaign because Tatjana and I, we've been friends at Grey, and we kind of lost sight of each other a bit. And then at BBDO, we realized, well, we're in the same company again. And I think she's super talented art director. And we were chatting, and I think it was by the end of 2020, or 2020. And we were looking at the situation in Poland, where basically the government made it all sorts of abortions completely illegal. And we were talking about, and we were like, wow, we are really shocked, and this is a tragedy, and that's a massive problem, because that's a healthcare topic. That is a healthcare topic. I mean, there's actual facts, there are research that say, like, making abortions illegal, it doesn't stop abortions. It stops safe abortions. So basically what happens is that women go into crazy risky situations to end their pregnancies that will cause, for a lot of them, death or serious harm. And as we were talking about it, at some point, we were like, wait a second, what is the situation in Germany? And then we were quite shocked to realize, and probably we should have known before, but we didn't really, that abortions in Germany are also not fully legal. So there are three ways where you can have an abortion that is not punishable by law, but in general, it's not legal. And in general, it's still part of the criminal law. It's not part of a healthcare act or something, or at least civil law. It's part of criminal law. And we looked into it. And then in the year 21, this law was celebrating quotation marks, celebrating its 150th, very terrible word for German, birthday. And we looked at it and we were like, wow, this is unfucking believable that we still operate under such a law. And I think many of the listeners might have heard of Christina Hende, who is a doctor who actively fights for abortion rights. And because she shares information about abortion on the website of her practice, she has been sued many, many times. Mm-hmm. And then also Grey Hamburg, they had a campaign that was against this Criminal Act article, I think it's 219, that forbids doctors to give out information about abortion. But even with that law, that has been changed now. So as we speak today, 219 has been changed. I think it has been abolished. But even that doesn't change the fact that abortions are still illegal. So we sat together and we talked a lot about, okay, what can we do? How can we create attention for this topic? And then we got Sidon on board, who, as I said, I think is one of the greatest illustrators ever met. And we created these really, really colorful, nice images of it's basically a uterus.
Yes.
And so the picture you're looking at, when you look at the picture on Jan's Instagram, is very colorful, different uterus. And they come with some catchy headlines like Patriarch Ciao. I really like this one. And we used these very colorful abstract uterus, and we arranged them in the main visual like a birthday card, like a big, nice celebration card.
Yes.
So it's super colorful. It's super happy. It's a very nice image. And again, talking about the topic of inclusion, we did that to not create an image that is repellent, like to create an image that can be liked by many people. Because if you go in and you show a uterus like in a very medical way, I think lots of men go like, not my topic. I've got nothing to do with it. And then if you decide to go like, I don't know, like flash color, it becomes very medical. It becomes really inside your body. It becomes like something you don't talk about. It becomes quite intimate. But by breaking it up and making it super, super colorful, we wanted to create a happy image and something that doesn't repel you, but something that attracts your attention.
Yeah, and you have to look twice actually in the main visual, to identify what you're looking at. And
that was also the idea, and
yes.
and we wanted to create something that men can also share.
Yes.
So the idea was to do something, and not only men. Everyone who doesn't have a uterus and everyone who has a uterus doesn't necessarily have to be men, women, that they can be part of it, because it's not just the people with uterus topic. It's a topic for all of us. And usually it takes two to make a kid, right? So
I guess most of the times, yes.
Most of the time, definitely, yes. And so, yeah, we created this campaign for Terre de Femme. We got a lot of support from BBDO, from Till Diesel and Marc-André. I'm very thankful for that. And we got some out-of-home media space and created together with a digital artist from Spain. We created a filter that people could use to show that they are in favor of a pro-choice movement.
Yeah, I saw that on your Instagram, and it is like a face mask, and it looks amazing. Exactly.
It's almost like a crown, and you can still use this filter. And we wanted to just create awareness around the topic. There are lots of petitions out there. Not all of them has reached critical mass. And then as we had a new government in place, that was giving us a lot of hope towards this topic, because it's a red-green government. It then was COVID, and then the war broke out. And that's very often sometimes that we can see when we have crisis, it's women's rights who get off the agenda first, unfortunately. And so 2 years after this campaign, we still have the situation that Article 218A is still illegal. It's still illegal in Germany.
Imagine that.
Yeah, imagine that. I find it unbelievable. And of course, I understand that maybe it looks like right now there are more important topics that we need to talk about in politics. But actually, no, because we have waited for over 150 years. And the fact that that abortion is still such a hush-hush topic and still such a big illegal matter is something that makes me super angry. But I think Nike van Dinty and Nike Jane from This Is Jane Wayne, I think she still has a petition running against 218. Please check her Instagram if you want to see the petition.
Yes,
and there are two others.
And you can send us the links. And we definitely will put them in the show notes. And I'm grateful that you brought this to the show, because I can definitely understand why that has a special meaning for you, and that cannot be emphasized enough.
Yeah. No, and it's really nice. It's really nice also to hear that from you, because, I mean, very often, men are also very surprised about this topic. But I don't want to do any men bashing here, because Tatjana and I were both also like, what? We didn't even know that. And we are women and we had no idea. So that just shows that the topic in general is not talked about enough. And we need to get it like out of the twilight zone and into the open.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I would love to take a little step back and reflect on your career as a creative, and also talk a little bit of mindset for a couple of minutes with you. And I would start with the first question, that is, did you ever struggle in your professional career? And if so, what got you out of that situation?
Many times. And I think it's part of being a creative, or part of wanting to be a creative is a struggle. And it's always thinking like, this is not good enough. Or even worse, sometimes you think like, that's fucking genius. People will notice like, this is going to change the world. Like, this is going to win me some awards. And then it doesn't. And that's both situations are equally soul crushing. And I think it's very important that we protect ourselves, and that we start to realize that we are worthy human beings, no matter if our work is successful or not, or if it's shiny enough, or if we earn enough money or not. Because I haven't done that for a long time. For a long, long, long time, my personal worth was very connected to being what I considered successful at work. And if I didn't have a good week, it was like my soul was crushed. And it took me a long time to actually realize that. And it was the year 21 where I was actually standing at a shoot for Nike, which is a great client. And I was so exhausted and so burned out. And I stood there, and my creative partner back then, Pedro Americo, who's an awesome human being, came onto the shoot, always in a good mood. And I said to him, can you please, please, please hug me? Because if you don't, I will throw my laptop into the spree and quit today because I can't anymore. Oh. And I was so exhausted. And I went on a 4-week holiday, like basically 3 days later. And it was so good. And I had time to like breathe and to do nothing. And then while I was on this holiday, I got the offer by Prime Video. And then I thought like, maybe this is a calling. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is, you know, a moment in life. Like there is a door opening right now that offers me an out of advertising. And so I thought like, well, why not try? Because like the application process, interviewing process with Amazon Prime Video is a very long, intense one. Mm-hmm. And I thought like, come on, let's give it a try. And then by the end of the holiday, they called me, and I was so sure that I'm not going to get the job. But by the end of that holiday, they called me and they said like, congratulations, we want to offer you a job. And I was like, okay, I need to think about it for 24 hours.
Another holiday.
Yeah, it's another holiday, exactly. And then I took the job, and then somehow, and that's another thing where I felt like this is really nice. It's a really nice story, because I stepped out of advertising like exactly 10 years after I stepped in. Like 1st of February 2012, I started as a junior copywriter at Grey Düsseldorf. And 1st of February, like 31st of January, exactly 10 years later, was my last day in advertising agency.
I don't believe like in coincidences, nice, so I guess you're right. That has been a calling.
Right? I think so too. I think so too. And it's not that I hate advertising at all, and I don't think it's a bad industry. But I think you have to be very protective of yourself if you step into this industry, and you really need to be very aware that you are more than your campaigns, that you are more than your awards.
So maybe
I wasn't.
Maybe we unpack that a little bit. So thank you first of all for showing the vulnerability and your experience with it. But for the ones that are maybe like thinking about going into the advertising world or being a creative per se, somewhere in the creative space, what was it like to reach that point of feeling so exhausted that you were thinking about throwing your laptop in the Spree? What happened, and why do you think you didn't notice before?
I think there are so many fun, glamorous elements of our job. You get to travel a lot. You meet a ton of interesting people. Like, I love to meet directors. It's so great, like, to look into their heads and to see, like, I give them a script, they turn it into, like, a whole world, like a universe. I think it's fascinating, you know, you can hang out with photographers. There are always people in the room that are smarter than you. There are always people in the room that can do stuff you can't do. And that's so magnetic. Mm-hmm. And that's so great. And that's so much fun. But then again, you're always like in a space where you think what you're doing there is super, super important. Like, I don't know, let's say talking about a specific shoe. You think, or a specific car, or a shampoo. And you focus a lot of your life and a lot of your energy and a lot of your time you dedicate to that one product. And you do that as a passionate creative with all your heart, and you put a little bit of yourself in there every time.
Yes.
And then when it's out in the world and you realize no one gives a shit, that can be quite soul crushing. And I think there is a way of enjoying the glam and the fun, and then accepting that what you put out there will not speak to everyone, and that's totally fine. And then as long as you help like a brand to reach their goals, or as long as you had a good time, then that's totally fine. And if you can create that mindset of like, I'm happy to give a little, but I'm not destroyed, and I'm not concerned if that little isn't like received well, then that's great. And I think then you can really strive in this industry. But that takes a little practice. But I think that's with every creative job. I think that's like with every writer or every singer or you know, whatever you do, it's the same for your job, right? You put a little bit of yourself in there, and then if it's not well received, you need to be able to accept that without being harmed by it.
What is the one thing that the creative family can learn from you?
You know, and I did some like speaker panels before, and I think I was quite arrogant because I did sometimes believe that I have like something really important to say and that people can learn something from me. I don't do anymore, but I can share what I wish I had realized earlier. But I think that the whole process is a very individual one. So I'm going to share what I wish I had realized earlier. Just quickly coming back what you said before, I think it's important that whatever you do, you also do something that is good for you.
Yeah.
And not only for someone else to make more money by selling more cars. And good for you could mean winning awards with it, because that will make it easier for you to earn more money. And if that's what you want, then that's fine, right? So like, or you find yourself projects that you're interested in, like I did with the Terre de Femme. I'm interested in it, so I turned it into a project. So that's totally fine. But the one thing that I wish I had kind of realized earlier is, if you have a passion for something, and if you want to tell a story, or if you want to show the world like your vision, just get out there. Don't be afraid. And of course there will be people who don't like it, and of course there will be people who don't think you took a great picture, or who don't think you wrote a great story, or who don't think you're a great illustrator, or whatever. But it doesn't matter. It's important for you to not be afraid to follow like your passion and what makes you happy, and then put yourself out there. It's just something I recently experienced again when I published a little short story. I got so much great feedback, and I was like, wow, that's so nice. And people actually texted me like that story made me cry, or I could really feel every word in there, and that felt very genuine to me. And I was like, wow, that's a nice creative mission. That's a nice creative vision. So the only thing that I think you can learn from me is like, don't waste your passion and love just for others. Make sure that you do something that is good for your soul, and don't be afraid to put it out in the world. Even if there might be haters, there will be lovers too. And if you do it with good intentions, I think there will always be more lovers than haters.
Absolutely. I love that. And this is a very powerful way to say it, as you said. And I totally believe that once you do a thing with passion, it becomes something that you do with so much energy, positive energy. And talking about haters, I think it's a good thing if they show up. Although it's hard to handle them, but I always feel pity for these people, because whoever takes time out of his day to shit on others, on the creative assets of others, that's so sad to see, that I really wonder what's going on in their lives, especially when they do it with a pseudonym.
Yeah, of course.
That's so hilarious. And
absolutely. Just imagine being like that deprived of joy in your life, that you actually sit there and write a mean comment. That's so sad. Like, you know, there are so many other things you could do, like go and masturbate. It's going to make your day a lot better than writing someone that they should, you know. So.
But yes, and we had this topic many times actually already in several conversations here, but this is so important to understand that it's not about that one negative feedback. Of course I think everybody that's not affected by that is a real pro. And this one mean comment can ruin your day, but you shouldn't let that touch your heart, because what you did out of your passion is so much more important, and your mission, to follow your mission and your passion is especially as a creative, I think that's the only thing that you should trust is your heart and your way that you feel it. You want to put it out to the world. And of course you have to learn, and you can learn from even from bad campaigns or bad images that you created or whatever. But that shouldn't stop you if you're passionate for that. And yes, I love that you said that.
I got a fun story also for you. I think it was the last campaign that I was working on, creative director and BBDO. It got like flop of the week in W&V. And I thought like, that was hilarious because we've been working on this, or like the team, we exhausted 2 or 3 senior creative teams, like top-notch people, amazing creatives. We exhausted them on that campaign because the client kept changing strategy and they kept changing the brief, and we exhausted top-notch teams, really amazing people.
Yes.
And then we finally went to Barcelona to shoot this commercial. And then like someone from W&V goes like, oh, that was really boring. It's like flop of the week. And I was like, I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was so funny, but it didn't bother me anymore because it was like, you don't know the history of this. Like, you have no idea what we went through to get this out into the world. So I thought it was really funny. And so without even thinking about it, I was sending it to my team, like with a smiley. And they panicked. They were like, fuck, is our career, like, is this the end of our career? Like, if we're looking for a new job and people Google us and they see this, will they stop hiring? I was like,
no.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry, guys. I did not realize what I did here because this is hilarious. No one cares. I promise you, no one cares. Yeah. Absolutely no one cares. But yes. I didn't realize that, of course, sometimes it takes another 3 years of life experience or job experience to see this and laugh about it rather than cry over it, right? But I felt like, oh my God, this is so funny. The audacity to just sit there and watch something and go like, flop of the week.
Yeah.
It's
maybe
painful.
Maybe that person just forgot to masturbate.
Probably, but also like shout out to the creative family. And I think it was Niat who I met when she was working for, I forgot the name of the agency, but she worked for a digital agency. I think she is now with Service Plan. And under this flop of the week comment article on LinkedIn, Niat commented and she said like, can we please stop the category of flop of the week? Because there are creatives, there are humans behind the work, and yes. They didn't wake up in the morning and decided to produce shit. They probably went through a lot. And so I'm not sure if I ever told you that yet, but thanks a lot, because I think you're absolutely right. Can we please stop bringing people down and just celebrate good work instead
yes.
of like, yeah.
That's great. And did they stop it?
I don't think they did. And in all fairness, I think some messages are bad and they need to be called out. Like if there is an ad out in the world that tells you you need to be skinny to be loved, for example, that's bad and we should call it out. But like regular advertising, we don't need to sit there and be super judgy. So I think we can just accept that some productions are better than others, and that's fine.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? How is it? How to improve resilience and mindset as a creative when it comes to challenges like that?
I think in my life, 2 things have helped me. 3 things.
All right.
One is have a side hustle that also makes you very happy. And this side hustle doesn't have to be something that brings you money, for example. Mm-hmm. It can be painting with watercolors if that's what makes you happy, or clay work or whatever. Have a side hustle, have something. And for me, it's like doing something with my hands. Like whenever I'm like in a deep crisis, I start painting my apartment. So like you can walk out of my apartment like on Tuesday in the morning and you walk in Tuesday night and suddenly half of all the walls are black, for example, because I felt like I need to do something. So doing something with your hands, and this could be writing or painting or clay work or I don't know what. This has really helped me because it's a physical proof that you are able to create. Yeah. Even if no one buys your concept, you're able to create. Like you have 2 hands and you have a mind and you're able to create. That's number 1. Number 2, have real friends. If you're lucky enough to have real friends, not just like industry peeps or fans or people you would love to be friends with, because there are so many cool people out there that I would love to be friends with. But if you have real friends with real lives and real stories, that's great. And the third thing, and it's probably not a big surprise and it's probably a bit cliche, but I find it very true, is learn how to breathe.
Yes. Well, we've been talking about that earlier today, and I guess that's a very important topic. Do you want to jam on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think you are more experienced with meditation. I last year discovered this thing called psychedelic breath. Mm-hmm. And for me, a friend of mine asked me, do you want to come to like a psychedelic breath session with me? And I was like, I don't even know what that is, but yeah, of course I do it. And I was transformed. I saw the light. It was so good. Like, it was really, I drank the Kool-Aid. I think it's the best thing that ever happened to me.
So what is that exactly? Maybe you can explain a little bit what happened to you on that event. What is psychedelic breathing?
It's this breath technique that Eva invented. Again, I don't know how to pronounce her last name correctly, so I won't do it, but we can put her Instagram in the show notes.
Yes, maybe. Absolutely. Love that.
And it's a very simple breathing technique. As you breathe in through your nose, and then you breathe out through your mouth. So it's like, but you do that quite rhythmic, and you do it over 10 or 11 circles. And at the end of every circle, you breathe in, then fully out, and then you stay like with your empty lungs for some time, and then you breathe in again, and then you keep the breath in, then you let it go, and then you start the next circle. And if you're not experienced really with breathing, and like I did it for the first time, you get lots of very intense also physical sensations. Like I lost hearing for some seconds, like my face was super like I lost the feeling in my fingers and my hands. But at the same time, I felt like I gained a clarity of mind that was really so great. And then there was this moment, and I mean, of course you can all physically explain this, right? But there was this moment where I felt like I had like an idea, like a path that I wanted to walk on, like a question to the universe, like, am I on the right path? And like in round 9 of breathing, I could really feel like light. And like, it was a very clear answer. It was like a very clear yes. And of course, this has a lot to do with like, that's the answer I wanted to get, that's what I was focusing on. But it's it's a very empowering moment when you allow yourself to say yes. Like, you don't need permission. I'm a grown-ass woman. I don't need my parents to tell me I'm allowed to do stuff. I don't need my bosses to tell me I'm allowed to do stuff. I'm a grown-ass person who can make their own decisions. But sometimes you need to trick yourself into, asking higher spirits. And so I had this experience of like, I felt like I was bathing in light. I was incredibly happy. And I lived last year exactly like I wanted to live it. I only did things where I felt like they are right for me in this moment. And part of me thinks that I owe it to Eva and that I owe it to this experience, because it did free me from the idea that I need to ask for permission.
That's so
cool. So I stopped asking.
That's so cool. Breathing, well, I think you can do so much with the right breathing technique. For me, it allowed me to disconnect from a mind fuck, for example, and it also, I think, if you breathe, like you said, what the method you mentioned, I think it can. Is it like hyperventilating at some point, right? So it's this, there was a technique that also Wim Hoff is teaching. He's like, you breathe in fully and then you breathe out fully, and you do that for like 30 times. And after that, you breathe out completely and then you hold your breath. And the interesting part is that if you breathe in very deeply and if you breathe out very deeply, everything out, and you do that like 30 times without stopping, and you don't wait until you breathe in again, you get that sensation of a sparkling head. Yeah. And that's just the oxygen like that you get. And that is, in his words, I think it is like resetting the nervous system. If you do that not just once, but if you do that for like a certain period of time over a couple of days, And that can help you to like get out of that loop, and that connect you with your spirits and with your mind and with your body. So it's like resetting everything to be in your middle again. And that is actually what it did to me. And it helped me a lot to, once I feel out of focus or out of my middle, I can get back there very fast with a simple breathing technique. And it was very, like for you, it was for me like a very powerful experience to find this peace in it, right? And to have that calmness. And if you combine that with meditating, for the ones that didn't do it yet, like a meditation is helping you to understand that you are not your thoughts.
Yeah.
And you can have that simple image, like there's your mind is the blue sky, and the clouds in front of that, they can be your thoughts, and those can pass by, or you can like push them. Oh, hit the microphone. Just you can push them away, and the blue sky will always be there. And if you understand that you have that power, and you're just getting reminded of that, that can be a very powerful tool in your tool set to be able to find more resilience and have more inner peace. But it's not for everybody, because some people don't see the benefit of it because they are afraid to try, or they heard different things about it. And of course, that's fine. But I guess we both agree that can help you to be more calm and centered in your life. And I guess, especially as a creative, the mind never stops working. You always, well, I guess you can relate, but you always have inspiration everywhere, and it can strike you even in the weirdest places and in your time off work. And I guess that's one of the benefits and the downsides of being a creative at the same time, that you cannot let go of work.
Agreed. It can be very overwhelming. It can be so overwhelming. And then you still have a personal life, right? Where probably also overwhelming things happen.
Of course. The real life happens
important. There. Yeah, it's so important. Do you use like a specific app or like a specific meditation program, or?
I tried many. For a time, I enjoyed Headspace, but eventually I found the meditations of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he has a very special way of getting you into a state of, I don't actually know what it's called, but if I do it, I can really lose myself in there for a time. And I like to combine that with silent meditation, and just breathing. And so I sit down in the morning or in the evening and just sit there for 10 minutes or something like that. And I learned from a really wise woman in Slovenia on holiday that she said to me that you can only meditate right when you are just completely silent. And it's not about finding a specific state of mind. It's only concentrate on your breathing, and there will be a second or two where you don't think about anything. And that's what you want to reach. It doesn't have to last longer than a second, but that second can be the reset that you were looking for.
Yeah.
And that was a powerful moment for me, because I never thought about it like that. I just thought that when you meditate, you just need to listen to what this voice says, and everything's good. Of course, that can get you into a certain state, and I guess if the meditations are guided in a good way, it will certainly do its job. That's what I liked about Headspace in the beginning. But finding that inner peace moment, is something that I don't need any impulses for.
Yeah. And that's great. It's also so powerful if you can just, sit on a chair and do it for yourself and start to realize your breath rather than needing like a smartphone with an app on there or a computer with a YouTube video or something.
Yeah,
so.
well, I guess meditation has been around a little bit longer than smartphones.
Definitely, yeah.
But the advertisement will maybe have affected us in a different way. Anyhow, that's a great topic, and I guess we can fill 2 episodes with that.
Yeah, we could do like a special meditation for creatives, class or something.
Yeah, and also some breathing techniques that might be fun too. Actually, the voice guides by Wim Hoff are quite funny. If you try his app, I think that you have got a couple of free sessions of his breathing technique, and it's really funny to listen to him when he speaks German, for example. That is a lot of fun. I love Dutch people speaking German. It's a very funny accent, and
it sounds very, very sweet in a way.
But he's such a, I don't know, in Germany we would say Kauz. Mm-hmm. I don't know the English word for that.
Very quirky person, I would say. Yeah.
Yes, so it's very enjoyable to see, and I would love to sit in an ice bath with him eventually. I guess that's the other thing that he does, like combining the breathing with ice bathing. And
I have friends who do like the cold shower thing, and I'm so impressed. And I always think like, oh, you were so cool. I can't. I literally can't.
Did you try?
I tried. I can't. There's also people who are like, oh, but it's also really good for your skin. You know, they thought they can get me with my vanity. If they go like, it's got to be great for your skin as well. But it's like, no, I need a very hot shower. It's like I want to boil myself.
Well, you can combine that. That's what I usually do. I have warm showers in the beginning and then cold showers for, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes. And
I probably try again. It would also be great because living costs a million. I'm just going up and up. And if I use less hot water, this might be good for my purse.
Maybe you could try that. And certainly it does help. If you combine that with breathing techniques, it gets you through that very easily. But hey, that was a nice deep dive into the mindset topic, and especially finding a way to more resilience. And I loved the points you gave us. And I would like to continue with the more interactive part of the show, where we ask guys from the creative industry, like the recent guests from the show, and all people that want to throw in the questions, they are more than welcome. And actually, I had to pick because there were so many, and I'm just really looking forward to what you're going to say to those, because there are very interesting and diverse questions. And I would like to start with the question from my previous guest. That was David Grover, and David, he is the head of product training at Capture One, and he's the one that goes through all the webinars, and he's the face of education at Capture One. And he asks, what is the most valuable skill you learned other than your primary creative skill?
Wow, that is a very good question. Empathy. I think I'm a really empathetic person. Again, really tough word for German tongue. No, but I really think that's important, because I honestly care about people. And I think that's, as a human being, that is a very important skill that, by the way, you can train. Even if you weren't born with it, you can train empathy. But I think also as a creative, that's a very important skill, because it should allow you to understand if what you're saying there is really will be received by humans or not. And I think it's also very important when you write dialogue. I'm very allergic towards dialogue where I go no person on this planet Earth would ever say it in that way. So empathy, yeah.
All right. I would love to follow up with a few questions from the creative family. And Sarah, she asks, how to stand out as a creative in an advertising agency?
Oh, wow.
I guess she means when you are in the beginning stage of your career. But that was my guess.
I mean, yeah, oh, wow, that's a really tough question because our industry tends to... Okay, and the other way around. Lots of bosses are lazy. So if you're not loud, they might not notice you. Then again, I don't think you need to be loud to be noticed. So two thoughts on that. I think if you constantly put out great work where you really think about the work, that is not just hammered out, but it has like a deeper meaning behind it. That is a bit more clever, that is a bit more intellectual, that is a bit more thoughtful. Good work will get noticed. And then I have a very superficial answer for you. Don't just dress in black all day. Like when I moved to Berlin, I was like, wow, how fucking boring. So, for example, when I have an interview, and this is a very shit thing that I said that now because today I'm wearing just an all black shirt.
The both of us.
Both of us, very boring creative black job. But usually, for example, when I have an interview, I ensure that I wear something very easy to notice, and I usually start my introduction with something that is very easy to remember. And that's what makes it easy for people to remember you. For example, I would wear like a bright pink top, and I would tell people, because usually they go like with this question, tell us something about yourself. I'm thinking like, oh my God, that's the worst question ever. And then I always go like, I used to be a bouncer in Frankfurt. And this combination is very easy because people might forget your name, but they will go like, who is this person with the pink thing with that bouncer story?
Yes.
So just put out good work and then give people something to remember you by. So this might be a colorful top or it might be a great story. And
yes.
I think this could help.
Absolutely agree. And now you just took away Kai's question. Who said that rumors say that you were a bouncer in underground parties in Frankfurt. Any comment on that?
Yes.
So you were.
Yeah, obviously I was. It's a true story, and it's a true. It's only a fun story if you actually have seen me as a physical person standing.
Is there
in front of you.
any evidence of that?
There is evidence. I do have a letter.
There are many videos on YouTube where you're sending away people.
I wish. I do have a letter that is signed by Kai, by the way, because he was one of the guys who was throwing these parties. And it's a signed letter that says, like, I hereby confirm, exactly. I hereby confirm that Jeanette was a bouncer. But
that's amazing.
The true story behind it is these were friends of friends who started like an underground party thing in Frankfurt. And at some point, they just asked around if someone would want to do like the cash desk. Like, so basically I was taking €5 from people and I was putting a stamp on their hand. But of course, doing that, also sometimes you gotta go like, are you sure you want to join this party? So, yeah. That's
so cool. I would love to have seen you there.
Yeah, but for those who don't know me, I think we have to explain that I'm very short. So if I tell people I used to be a bouncer and then I'm 164 centimeters high, it looks really ridiculous if you imagine me standing at the gate.
But you have a strong punch.
Yeah, definitely.
And as Christoph said, you have a very bold attitude, so I guess you can be very convincing in that. You don't get in. Okay.
Exactly.
So Jesse asks, do you think young women at the beginning of their career and women in general are viewed differently than men in the creative industry?
Unfortunately, yes, I do think so. I also think that lots of things are changing at the moment. They're changing as we speak, and they're changing as a new generation grows into leadership roles, and they treat their staff differently than maybe they leaders that treat their staff. So yes, things are changing. I personally was very lucky. I had lots of like really strong, cool female bosses who were very in favor of supporting me and supporting my career, supporting my ideas. So I was personally very lucky, but I know a bunch of women who weren't. I know a bunch of horror stories, and I'm not going to lie. I have said things like, oh, she's in a bad mood. Is she menstruating? This is like, I think it's the world we grow up in. It's a very like male focused industry, or it used to be. And I have said shitty things, and I probably also behaved shitty when I started in ad industry, and I probably wasn't always a great boss. And you do sometimes have prejudice if there's like a shy woman standing in front of you versus a tall, bold guy. That's how our mind works. But I think we're also very responsible to actively work against that. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you realize that you have a prejudice or that you don't think fairly, you actively need to work against it. And so I don't think that the working chances or situations are completely equal, but I think that we are moving towards equality. Definitely.
Amen. Daniel asks, that's a question that made me really curious. Where's Gabriel, and why does Gabi hang out at the toilet?
Okay, I know exactly which Daniel asked. I don't know if Daniel really wants me to tell the whole story. Maybe I do one version of the story, and then like the real version, and then the soft version. You can decide what's better for the audience. So,
all right.
First of all, who is Gabriel? Gabriel is a table that Daniel and I met at the after show party at the Moderat concert. So Daniel, he knows the guys from Moderat. So Moderat were playing in Berlin and Wuhlheide, and he took me with him. Daniel is a good friend of mine, one of the greatest directors I've ever met and the most lovable person I ever met. His nickname is Gabi. And at the after party, we stood around a table, and this table was really shaky. And for some reason, we called the table Gabriel. And we created a very intense relationship with Gabriel. And this story isn't funny for anyone who wasn't there. I think it's only funny for the two people who were there, standing around Gabriel. Gabriel, the shaky table.
I believe that Gabriel had to carry a lot of drinks.
Gabriel had to carry lots of drinks. Yeah, that's probably the reason why we thought it's the funniest thing ever. So we took a very good care of Gabriel. We made sure that no one else noticed that Gabriel was doing an absolute shit job. And I'm sure that Gabriel is probably in some wasteland now because the people realized that he's not a good table. So he's probably dead now, broken somewhere.
But he left his legacy with this story.
He left his legacy with the story. And in fact, sometimes, because we haven't seen each other in quite a while, when I start to understand it, I text them, what do you think? How's Gabriel doing? So, yeah. So
Gabriel, if you're hearing us, and even if you're not, this one was for you, and we keep your legacy up.
Yeah,
you're forever in a podcast now.
You're forever in a podcast, absolutely. Yeah, and then the version you're probably not gonna send out. I gotta say, we were also high as kites on mushrooms, so that was probably the only reason why we thought it was absolutely funny.
Oh, right. So. I would decide to leave this in, if you don't mind.
Oh, I don't mind. I mean, again, we talked about psychedelic breath and, reaching like a different state. And I would say that mushrooms are probably a very safe way.
It's a shortcut, but yeah. You might be able to reach that state in another way.
Absolutely, yes. Not promoting drugs here.
That was a really good one. And the next question by Daniel is the perfect transition to the next block, which is the future of the creative industry, actually. And I think he's referring to Amazon Prime Video. But the question is, are they, so I guess you and your creative asset producing machinery, shifting into AI digital work in the near future? So would you rely on AI to create certain assets?
I think that it's going to be a very interesting playing field that we can use to come up with different stories or different techniques or different connections between things. And there are, of course, stories. Like, I don't know actually if it's true. I don't know if it's true. But there are stories, for example, around Stranger Things, that the people that created Stranger Things, they went like, okay, the 80s are really hot right now. Then we need an element of horror. Like, that it was basically planned. Like, probably planned. And dots were connected. Like, oh, people like this, people like that. If we put all of these ingredients together, we're going to have a hit show. Don't even know if that's a true story or not. But it's a story that's around in the industry forever. Could AI help us to create these patterns? For sure. Because it would get very easy for us to determine, like, what are trends at the moment? What are people talking about? Like, what colors, what words, what style, what fashion, what names, whatever is hot right now. And we could throw it into a big, massive pot. But that's only a very, very, very small percentage of the work. The real work comes after. I mean, people still had to write dialogue for Stranger Things. They still had to do lots of casting, and they had to find these very, very talented young kids to play these roles, right? Still,
Absolutely.
Some music supervisor had to sit there. Like, AI could tell you this kind of music is hot right now, but you still have to make sure that it works with the show and with the environment. So I think AI can become a tool for us to find answers. I don't think it is the answer.
I relate to that. And I was discussing that on an event with Wacom recently, that why on earth do people take pictures of themselves and accept that they are like adjusted by default?
It's crazy, isn't it? But then again, I think for those people, it makes a lot of sense, because in real life, if I walk down the street, I get my coffee, I maybe go to Rewe, maybe if I'm really in a good mood, I go to a restaurant. So in average, maybe 100, 150 people see my face in real life. If I have like lots of followers, what I personally don't have, but of course lots of other people have, like 10,000s, 100,000s, like if you give me K, millions of people are going to see your face. So I kind of understand the urge that your digital image that is mostly fake becomes more important to you than your real image. But then again, I hope that this phase of like super perfection or like computer generated perfection, like where sometimes you look at images and you go like, is this real or is this like an animation? Yeah. There's always like to every trend, there's like a anti-trend coming, right? And I hope that we in the future will see the comeback of hyper-realism and like reality in the sense of like pores and pimples.
Yeah, but I guess that happens already. I can definitely agree to that. So brands have changed their retouch briefs a lot. Some tend to always fall back every now and then, but there's a trend going backwards, and that's good. And but the other thing is what happens on your mobile devices.
But it's just so tempting, isn't it? The other day I took a picture and I just checked just for fun. I went through the filters. Like I never use face filters ever. Just for fun, I went through it and I used one. It was like just a light retouch, and I looked at myself and was like, "Wow! If I was that pretty, how?" So it's crazy because it was just a light retouch, and still I felt like it suddenly felt like an ideal version of you is just one tap away.
Yeah,
and it's so tempting to not tap.
Yeah,
it's so tempting. It's so tempting. But yeah, then again, I think it's better if you meet people in real life and they're positively surprised than going like, oh,
oh, that's you. Oh, fuck.
You.
Fuck my life. I want to sit to someone else.
One of the reasons why I would never use a dating app is exactly that. Like, I could not stand a moment when you're in front of someone and you go like, you look very different online. So.
We'll keep it like that. That's a good point to have people think about this. Yeah. All right. So looking at the clock, I'd say that we move to the next block and the last block of the show, which is the quickfire questions. And the way it works is I give you the question and you tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. And you answer in as short as possible. Like you have a sentence, you can have a word, whatever comes to your mind. But we are not going to deep dive into those questions.
All right.
So, first one. What would be your statement if you could put one on a large billboard?
Just fucking be yourself.
What is your favorite fun hobby?
Eating.
What could the next generation do better than you?
Be less afraid.
What would you love for your peers to say about you on your 80th birthday?
She gave a lot of love.
What do you believe in that others might call crazy?
Being yourself.
Which celebrity or band would you like to meet and why?
Oh God, so many. I do have a very special relationship with Star Trek. I once saw William Shatner. I would love to have a chat to William Shatner.
Wonderful. What is easier for you to say no to today than a few years ago?
Work that does not interest me.
What or who inspires you?
Captain Kirk.
What is your favorite book you gave as a gift to someone and why?
Pünktchen und Anton. Don't know the English translation, but it's a book by Erich Kästner and it's about friendship.
That's cool. What are your 3 favorite apps on your smartphone?
Oh God, it's so embarrassing. It's Instagram.
First one, Instagram?
Definitely Instagram. Second app, Arrive, for a fancy candle on a dark and gloomy Saturday.
What is that? I don't know that.
It's so big city bullshit. So it's an app where you can buy stuff, like for example, stuff from Aesop or Hey, or you can buy a nice rosé or something sparkling or cosmetics from Barbara Sturm, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so that is basically like a food delivery service, like these instant ones, like Gorillas, but for other
goods,
other stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. You got another one?
It would probably be something like Gorillas, and I'm very sorry, but yeah.
Yeah, it can be very tempting.
Yeah.
I recently told that to someone that lives in a village, and he didn't even understand what I was referring to. I was like,
yeah, and
what?
I always feel so bad when I use it that I always give a lot of I tip a lot because I always feel so bad for using it.
What makes you happy?
Being with my friends.
Wonderful. So that's it. Thank you so much for the quick fire questions, and there will be 3 remaining questions, but I give those to you. Okay, so the first question I would love for you to ask is to the creative family. And the second one would be one for the next guest without you knowing who it's going to be. And the third question is the one that I didn't ask you, but you would have loved to answer.
All right. Creative family, I would love to know, what would you do if you weren't afraid of doing it? Hello, next guest. I would love to know if you travel back in time, would you go for the same career again? And I really enjoyed our conversation a lot. So, but because, and that's again, like people can't see me and can't see you, but you can see me and I can see you. I wish you would have asked me about my really nice tattoos on my hands.
So I'll ask you, why do you have 2 exclamation marks and 2 question marks on your fingers?
I'm so glad you asked. It's so surprising. Here's the short answer, but I think it's a good wrap up for our conversation that took quite a spiritual turn. I think everything in life is rather a question or an answer. And to get the right answer, you got to ask the right question. And if you ask the right question, you get the right answer, right? And if you don't know the answer, you got to go back to the question. And so I got these when I was in Mallorca for a month, and these are Spanish exclamation marks and question marks. So one's there on the head and one way they are the other side. And I think the beauty of it is that no matter in which perspective I look at my own hands or someone else sees my hands, they can always see like a right question mark or a right exclamation mark in their perspective. And the same goes for me. And
That's so
it's like
cool.
a connection to my Spanish heritage, but also it's a daily reminder that like if I'm not happy, I should start asking the right questions. And if I know what I want, then I should just go for it and make it an exclamation mark rather than, being passively in a corner and not doing what I want to do. So, yeah.
That is so cool.
That's the story.
That is so cool. Thank you for bringing that up. And to finish our conversation, how can the audience reach you? So is it the common social channels, or where do you hang out in Mallorca? Or
yeah, I'm old school. I just deleted Facebook. Please don't add me at LinkedIn, because that's the next app I'm planning to delete, because I can't stand the fucking Humblebrag on there anymore. So you can reach me on Instagram, or you go to my website that is literally just my name.com, and send me an email if you want to. And I'm always happy to chat. And I enjoyed this conversation a lot. Can't wait for this podcast to be out. Also gonna send a big thank you message to Christoph. That was a really, really nice surprise and a blast from the past.
Well, I truly give that back to you. It was a pleasure to talk to you and to have you here. And especially the deep dives we had on breathing were surprising and very enjoyable. And last question, is there anything that the listeners can do for you?
Yes, of course. Like, don't stop creating. Please put yourselves out there, no matter what you do. Just put yourselves out there. I'm sure there's going to be an audience for whatever your craft is. And I just love to be around people who do stuff, because that's the most inspiring thing. So yeah, thank all of you for listening and for being who you are and doing whatever you do, because I'm sure it means something to you, and so it will mean something to someone else. So yeah, there's
nothing I can add to that. Jeanette, thank you so much for being on the show today and for sharing all your history, your wisdom, and you're a kind human being. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jan. Have a lovely evening.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Creative Industry Radio. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and took away some valuable insights into the creative industry. I'd love to hear from you and to continue the conversation. So make sure to leave a comment on the respective show episode posts on Instagram and LinkedIn, and let us know what you think about the image and the story to it that was shared. And of course, you're welcome to answer the question of today's guest. And if you liked what you heard today and found value in it, why not share the love and forward this episode to a friend or colleague who could also benefit from the content? Your support means the world to me, and a subscription to this podcast would be greatly appreciated. So, until next time, keep being creative and stay tuned for more episodes of Creative Industry Radio. This is your host, Jan, signing off.